together and work this out. By the time this is done, I don't, maybe developers, I don't know, they maybe should even be, maybe a developer who's been around for a while, like a SME, who's actually understands the business, maybe could definitely add value here, but usually they're just waiting to see, okay, give me what I need to code and off you go. So, moving on, right? Let's see, next, minimum viable architecture. I haven't delved more into this one. So prototype, when building a new API, just enough, and use existing APIs as growing numbers consumed. So here I'm still learning.
I think this is very applicable to the agile way of working.
Right.
So you are not really demanding an entire Swagger spec of everything that somebody is going to build.
Correct.
You are telling them, okay, build whatever you want to, maybe a function, maybe a feature, whatever you have.
Correct.
And then as we go ahead with it, in future you keep adding stuff, and you just build enough stuff for each of those iterations to be deployed into production as a consumable API.
Correct. And that brings up a good point, because sometimes, folks say, well, let's be agile by basically coming up with an entire design that's going to be vetted or collaborated on or approved or agreed, let's just say agreed on. And let's say you have several resources. Let's say an API has maybe 10 resources, that 3 I know I'm going to use, 7 I think I'm going to use, which is that's already a mistake. And then say, well, let's just build the whole thing and expose just 3, and and call that agile, as opposed to, I'm saying, well, in case of the Open API spec or design first perspective, go ahead and just design those 3, right? Just design what you're going to expose, and just enough interface and build it up. I think mocking, I don't know, sometimes maybe I'm wondering if the prototyping and the mocking, this is a place.
I don't think mocking is what they are applied to. They are just talking about an API architecture, which I would go with just having minimum functionality. Because as soon as you talk about mocking, you are now already expanding the minimum architecture.
Yeah, but then say prototype used when building a new API. Say, for example, then how do you? So I'm trying to figure out. That's a good point. So I'm trying to figure out, well, at what point of the APIOps cycle? Let's go back to the very beginning. I'm always interested in. Let's see. API Canvas. Go back to the very beginning, wondering in which of these do we get I'm trying to establish a quick feedback loop, right? And I think mocking is a valuable way of doing that. So where do we do this? So this is
I think so. It is in the build API stage, right?
Right. So value proposition.
I think the second stage has only got to do with architecture. It is only got to do with designing the Swagger spec. Maybe build a little bit to see if you are getting the right requests or responses back. And then you go on to, so I wanted to just, the famous pet store thing, I would write the Swagger spec and I would say, okay, get this ID, and you get it back. And that just responds back with your response for that pet, not really connected to a real system.
Right.
So that would be minimum architecture. And then when you get into the build APIs, you're going to go ahead and connect it to the backend systems.
Right. I mean, good point. I mean, that's all good stuff. I'm just wondering,